So good morning, Father. Happy to be here again on today is the 6th of January 2016, and we're going to continue our conversations on the lighthouses among philosophers. And in the past you talked about Aldous Huxley, and you also essentially talked about philosophy as defined as the love of wisdom. And equally that these great philosophers also express the wisdom of love. They kind of have found that beautiful sweet spot. You talked about Aldous Huxley in a previous conversation. So today I want you to talk about Raimon Panikkar, and why have you chosen him as one of your lighthouses? What is it that is really unique and powerful about his philosophy? What about it has really worked for you, struck you?
Yeah, okay. Now, I live my life as a Christian, as a convinced Christian, in the sense of I am a religious person, I am a priest, and Raimon Panikkar struck me as somebody who had very much my approach to religion and to religious work with religious people of all kinds of religions, because he is multi-plural, he is multicultural. It doesn't matter to him whether you're Hindu or Muslim or whatever it be. He is all-embracing in his views of things, and far, far better than I. What I've learned from him is he's extraordinarily not just intelligent but well-informed. He documents everything he says with factual evidence, of the myths of people, of the way they talk, and says, well, where is all this leading to? Where is it going? And among the things that interests me much about this is because I seem to, all through my life, fall in love constantly, not just to be loving, but to be in love with people I care about and so on. And he is one of these chaps who will speak about dealing with God, the capacity to be in love with God and to talk in such a way that people in the end realize that you simply are in love, and that God also enjoys playing this love game, And he said, when people finally realize that you are not saying things in order to be understood, but in order to make people realize that you are in love. And he extends this to God, and extends this to everything he does with people. And he is noted, for instance, in California for conducting these kind of vigils at night, where people of all kinds come, and he climbs mountains and greets the dawn and the fire, and he goes back to these basic things in all the religions. And what interested me most is, it says something about America also, is that in the next campus or the next university he is hardly known. He's not interested in creating waves, he's interested in creating an awareness. So anyway, I don't know whether that answers your question, but that's what I feel about it.
What I caught, which is interesting, is we think of philosophers as these rather dry, intellectual beings.
Very true, yes.
Whereas here is someone, and I think the book you're referring to is Rhythm of Being,
yes.
Where you're talking about...
Which incidentally is the summary of the Gifford lectures and so on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Raimon Panikkar, from what you are sharing, seems to be someone who just doesn't have the love of wisdom, but also embodies the wisdom of love.
Yes. Very true. Very true.
It's interesting because the love of wisdom would be very much the logos in us, and the wisdom of love would be the eros in us. Right? Anything that comes to mind as I share these two drives?
I think what is amazing to me in you, and which has helped me also personally, is that you have worked out for yourself a personal synthesis with which you are at ease. And this should be an invitation to everybody, me included, that the working out of this personal synthesis and being satisfied with it is extremely important in our work with people, and even more in being at ease with ourselves, coming to terms with who we are.
Yes. Beautiful. Why would you think Raimon Panikkar would be of interest to people of a more intellectual bent? I know you have recommended this book to someone like Vijay, for example.
Because you will find very few people who are as intellectual as he is. He is extremely brilliant intellectual. No one can doubt that. You may agree or disagree with him. But there are very few people who have his command and grasp of human thinking and human differentiation and the way it plays out and in fact the books published in English are only complementary to the things he publishes in other languages. Since I know German quite well, I've read him in German. I don't know Spanish that well, but I can manage with the Latin. He's written an enormous amount. He is equally fluent in German and in Spanish and in English, of course, and in Sanskrit, for instance. And he would shuttle between Benares here and California and Spain and talk to them all in their own languages. So if you want to understand Raimon Panikkar's complete set of works, you've got to also understand all the languages he knows. Because he throws light on what he says in one language and another language. So, I mean, he's superb. There are very few intellectuals of his caliber in the world today.
The other thing I picked up as you were speaking was that he's not just of this amazing intellectual caliber, but he will go and look at the dawn and do these fire ceremonies, and you said it simply by, that he brings everything back to its basics that exist in all religions. What came to me was it also sounded very shamanistic, based on more nature-based paths and traditions, the original Vedic, which were very earth-based, not so much, it was about matter, not spirit so much. It was as much about matter as it was about spirit. It was as much about the earth and terrestrial forces as it was about divinity. Rather, seeing divinity of the transcendent variety in the terrestrial experience, and which in the more feminist paths today are called the feminine, actually, that the feminine would be the body, nature, prakriti. To use prakriti to get to purusha. And or to have found that wonderful synthesis of prakriti and purusha, of body and matter, of nature and God.
Yeah, I mean, I would go even further. What you're saying is completely correct, okay? I will go even further in pointing out that if any person of any religious persuasion, as long as he's sincere and so on, he can interpret that person to himself in his own language, and therefore, until you read him in the different languages, it becomes impossible to realize how utterly brilliant and well informed this chap is. And not only that, But he is able to help each one to find his own meaning from what he happens to believe. As long as what he believes sincerely, he will question him and say, why are you saying this? Or what does this mean to you? And so on. And then give him an interpretation and makes him at peace with himself. So the result is that he is famous all over the world and wherever he goes. I mean, he has said things about Christ, for instance. He insists that he is a priest and a convinced Christian and all this kind of thing. But he makes Christ available to Hindus, Buddhists and everybody by reinterpreting Christ in terms which are multi-plural, multicultural, multilingual. It's just an extraordinary man.
So it's almost as if he gets to the myth of Christ rather than the religious figure of Christians.
Yes, I think that's one way to put it, if you understand what myth means, because for him, myth is the horizon of our experience. Meaning that unless you live by myth, you don't live at all. Myth is a way of telling yourself who you are. So again, you'll see shades of starting from. We mentioned him last time. I forget his name. He was a great pioneer and all this, Campbell. You see shades of Campbell and so on brought into modern reality,
So one last question on Raimon Panikkar. You're a Jesuit priest and he is also one, right?
No, he's not a Jesuit at all.
Sorry, what is he?
He is a priest.
Okay.
He's a priest of his own kind. Yes.
Okay. I really want to know what is the myth of Christ, because I feel very drawn to Christ and I am quite sure there's the myth of Christ that I'm drawn to, but I'd love to hear you say it in words.
See, to me the myth of Christ is very simple, but my word may be meaningful more to the Orthodox Christian or even the average Christian. Is when Jesus says, I am the Son of Man. What he really means is not what many Christians say, he is the Son of God, but he likes to be humble and like us and so on. No, it's only saying, I am human. And I am human, and I'm like this. So you are like that too. The kingdom of God is within us, not outside. That's why he came across as a person who really could relate to all kinds of people. If you come to think of it, here was a man who had nowhere to lay his head, who went all over the place, over the dusty roads of Palestine and so on and so forth. But if he was killed in the end and died, it was because he raised from the dead Lazarus, his friend, who was a rich man. I mean, he was very friendly with a lot of rich people. And so you come back again to this thing. There are so many Christians even today who are fighting for social justice and all that. His idea of poverty and so on was this all-inclusive thing of receiving everything from the hands of God. The myth of Jesus is contained very much in the Sermon on the Mount, and that is why Gandhiji was so much taken up by it, See the birds of the air, they neither sow nor do they reap. Look at the lilies in the field, and yet Solomon in all his glory was not clothed as one of these. He's all the time pointing out to the richness of the life that we all live. That I think is the basic myth of Jesus. And in fact, from that point of view, if anybody, and Gandhiji was one of the things who pointed it out to him, pointed most of all, it is said, I haven't checked this personally, but it is said, that the only image he had in his ashram was the crucifix. And he died and Jesus did.
I'm going to ask perhaps a heretical question. Was that myth to die on the cross and be the sacrifice, was that a kind of phase in the psychological and spiritual development of humanity, and could we perhaps be at another place now where we don't have to go through suffering? Is there a way to grow from joy?
Yeah, well, that I think is a very difficult question, because it's related to a question endlessly discussed even amongst Orthodox Christians. Did Jesus know he was God until the resurrection? In other words, was his discovery of his divine nature, which is what is the foundation stone of Christian belief, something that existed all through his life? Or was it that he, from the resurrection, came to realize, hey, there is something in me which I was not even aware of? And at present, both these views are held by Orthodox Christians. The view that I discovered this through the resurrection is held by fewer Christians, but they are Orthodox Christians. So, one of the things that attracts me most to Jesus, and probably to you also, is the fact of that ambivalence which allows us to identify with him.
Yeah, and it's really our personal inclination or preference that makes us choose the suffering part of his myth or choose the resurrection part of his myth.
Very good. Because once I was speaking in Pune, to a group of people who are mostly Maharashtrian Brahmins and so on, and I was explaining to them what Hinduism has done for me as a human being and as a Christian, both. So when I ended this, they came to me and said, my gosh, if this is so, we would all be Christian. This is not the idea we had of Christianity at all, And I told them, I said, Hinduism has helped me to become a better Christian. And I explained it, with chapter and verse, with quotations from the various Hindu scriptures and so on. And I said, see, this is why in fact, I went back to something like 1950 when I first discovered the Mystics of Maharashtra, a book written by Ranade.
Mm-hmm.
So, my God, these guys really, there's something. And then I began to read up on mysticism, and I said, hey, this is an authentic, absolutely authentic tradition of people of Naneshwar there's something. Even ideas such as asymptotically approaching the divinity, in oneself and so on. These are so modern, so mathematical, so scientific that I said, well, anybody who is human must accept it, whether they are Christian or Hindu or Muslim or anything. And this is the thing which, in a previous interview also, I mentioned about Rumi. Rumi is so universally acceptable because he goes to the very depths of human nature.
Yes. You used a word asymptotic. What was it?
Asymptotic.
Okay, say more.
Yeah. See, that's a kind of mathematical thing which I just cannot really explain in a simple way. I cannot explain it in a simple way, and I don't feel up to it just now.
Okay. So I'm going to close on Raimon Panikkar just as you answer this one question. We've gone through the myth of Jesus and him being a priest, and what does he mean by the rhythm of being, and why is it the title of his book?
Yes. See, for him, the category that is most important is being. You can approach the whole of reality if you say that everything, including God and so on, is a being. But if he then talks about God, he will say that God is a being in a different sense from the way other people are beings, okay? So we will never come to terms with the being of God, but He is the being, okay? As we will never come to terms with the love of God, but He is a lover, you know? Well, that's what He calls the mystery of God. For Him, and this is a very important category which I don't know if I've ever explained to you. This word mystery comes back again and again and again, the mysterious. I've used it in previous interviews about Einstein and so on. See, I like to explain it to people this way, you know. We have Agatha Christie mysteries, in which we end up by saying the butler did it, you know. Why is it mysterious? It's mysterious till you find out what is the reason for the happenings. But in a true mystery, the more you know, the more there is to know. The more you love, the more there is to love. So in the rhythm of being, he points this out very clearly. He said, you know, when you speak about the rhythm of being, he said, why do we dance? What does rhythm mean? Rhythm includes all kinds of things. It includes music, it includes time, it includes space. Notice in this he's saying that if we have very fixed categories, we are not on the right track.
Wow. Wow. That's huge. I love the way
it is
you
huge.
did that.
It is huge. And the thing is, unlike somebody like me, you know, I cannot document what I'm saying. Whatever he says, he documents. He says, well, you don't believe me? Look at this, look at this, look at this. He'll go to the Upanishads, he'll go to the thinking of the shamans, and he'll say it in different languages. And I mean, you know, he is a man who has understood that in fact any human being who is absolutely sure of anything is not fully a human being at all. Because
he's lost touch with the mystery.
Yes, he lost touch with the mystery. He lost touch with in fact, the simple reality that when you go to sleep, what you are aware of what is happening in sleep, because you can remember dreams and so on, but they are not what happens when you are awake. But that has to be taken into consideration because it's happening every night. Do we bother about it? No, we want to be conscious, we want to know exactly what we are doing at what time and be responsible for it. And the whole of our commerce and so on is dependent on that. Whereas I find that the new trends in business and so on are of the kind where you allow people to work at home, you know, to do it their way. The job must be done, it can be done this way, that way, the other way. The pluralism is something that is evident. And in fact, just day before yesterday in the paper, I read about the new ecological communities that are growing up around in the world, in which bartering for goods and so on, the thing they have. I mean, they are saving an immense amount of money and enjoying themselves much more.
Yes.
You know, that instead of having fixed hotels which they pay something, there are guest houses in which you can be there for some time and take your guests and so on and so forth, and everything is available. Then you go back to living a very simple life. This is gorgeous. I mean, I really, it's very much in the Panikkar mode of the rhythm of being.
Wonderful. Wow. So, I'm really intrigued enough to now read the book myself, even though you've gifted it to Vijay. I'm going to close on this one and then we'll pick up our final philosopher next.